We're very, very pleased to have Jenny with us this morning. Jenny is an attorney based in the Bay Area. And she's written a book actually on how to raise capital on your own terms. So we're going to focus today really on different, my computer's sending me messages. Different pathways to funding, pathways that we don't always think of, to kind of give you ideas on how to connect with investors outside of the very traditional angel investing, venture funding pathway. Jenny is a very firm believer in raising money on your own terms. You don't have to give out a majority of your equity in your business to thrive and survive. She's going to give us her best practices around that, her thoughts that are very out of the box. And what's also very amazing about Jenny is she's extremely focused on social mission driven and has been an avid supporter of those businesses throughout her career. So Jenny, so great to have you with us this morning. And please give us a bit more background, more detailed background about your career path, and then we'll launch into the slides. And just before we start, I also wanted to thank Maynard Cooper, a law firm actually based out of the Bay Area that is one of our sponsors, a sponsor of the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So thank you, Maynard Cooper, for sponsoring our programs. Jenny, great to have you this morning, and I'll let you fill in the gaps about your background before you start.
Great, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, and you can probably see my slide, can you?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, great. So yeah, I'll just go through the presentation, and then, I'm totally happy to stop at any moment and answer any questions that come up, so please interrupt me. I won't see them, but I understand someone will be sharing those with me if they come up.
Yes, I'll send them your way, Jenny. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I'll just quickly tell you about me. I'm an attorney. I graduated from law school 25 years ago. My first job out of law school was actually at a nonprofit organization in Oakland, California, doing community economic development. And I stayed there for 11 years, and it was a wonderful experience. My main work was supporting the small businesses in this low-income community. And I just really gained an appreciation for small businesses and how important they are in our communities, what a backbone of our communities they are, but also how under supported they are, how much they struggle. And I did everything I could to help these businesses at the nonprofit. And then I found out about this area of law called securities law, which is the law that governs how businesses can bring on investors. And I really didn't know anything about that. I had never really thought that much about bringing on investment for businesses because I was very focused on the nonprofit world. But I just became fascinated with this idea that small businesses could raise money from investors in a way that would be supportive of them, that would help them have healthier businesses. And I just learned everything I could about that area of law, and started a small law firm with a colleague to help small businesses get really creative about bringing on investors. So let's see. So I'll just go through the slides. So back in 2007, I had joined this small law firm in 2006. And then in 2007, my business partner, who was he was older than me, white guy, gray hair, I kind of really felt like, he's the boss. He knows what's going on. I'm just like helping out, even though he was very supportive of me and considered me a co-founder. But all of a sudden he got an amazing opportunity to get a job. He got a job in Boston. And so I had to take over this business. So all of a sudden, instead of just being a lawyer, I was now an entrepreneur and a CEO. And I had never really thought of myself as someone who could be an entrepreneur. I always thought of myself as like, yeah, I'm just the lawyer. I just do the work in the background. So suddenly I found myself running this business. We had an office. We had a bunch of really cool employees. This is a picture of some of them. And I just was completely overwhelmed. Every month it just seemed like we were barely able to pay our bills. I was working like 80 hours a week. You know, there are all these issues to deal with. And it just felt like this constant struggle of, you know, things are okay, but we're just on this treadmill where we're never quite making enough money to really pay ourselves decent salaries, to hire all the help we need. You know, we kind of had to, like, I had to wear way more hats in the business than I should have been, because I'm not good at every single thing. I'm good at some things, and I would have loved to have hired some people to help with other things. But our business was all about, what our business did was help entrepreneurs raise money from investors. So I was like, maybe we should do that. So we did. We actually decided to raise some money from investors. We ended up raising about $200,000. And that it bought us some cushion to be able to do a really good marketing campaign. This is a picture from a video that we made that shows, how we help people raise money from investors. And I'm really proud of it. And it just allowed us to finally get that breathing room to build things into our business that allowed us to kind of more sustainably run and grow our business and find more ways to become, to make enough money to cover our expenses. So I am a big believer that for many, many businesses, well, I'm going to talk about that in a second. So anyway, so we raised money. So in addition to helping my clients raise money, I became someone who raised money myself and became a real advocate for businesses thinking about raising money and whether it might be appropriate for them. So yeah, I love raising money from investors. These are me with a couple of my investors.
So just a quick question for you.
Sure.
That just popped up. How much equity did you issue for the 200K that you raised?
Okay, so we raised money in the form of debt. We offered a debt instrument. So we did not offer any equity. And I can talk more about what is the difference between offering equity versus debt. There's pros and cons to both. The main reason was really you're not supposed to have equity investors in a law firm.
Right.
So, yeah. So
I have a follow-up question to that. It's not very typical for non-partners to be investing in a law firm. That's a rather unusual setup. What was the story behind that?
What do you mean when you say the story?
So the investment was made. How did you convince your investor that this made sense
What we did was we did a public offering of an investment opportunity. So we did a bunch of legal paperwork with the state of California and the federal government that made it legal for us to take on investors. Our minimum investment was $1,000. And we were allowed to publicly advertise. So everywhere we went, we just told people, hey, we're raising money for our business. Here are the terms of the investment. You'll get paid back over 5 years. We're going to use the money to grow our business and make it more, healthy and sustainable. Would you like to invest? It was that simple. And so we ended up, I forget how many investors we had, but, a lot of people came in at $1,000. I think our biggest investment was maybe $35,000.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you set up a process for it and you reached out to obviously your network.
Just everyone we knew, because we weren't just a law firm, or we were a mission-driven business. Mm-hmm. We were on a mission to help entrepreneurs get healthy funding. So we didn't just go around and say, hey, we want to borrow money so you can, invest in our business. We were like, we're on a mission to make the world a better place for small businesses. Would you like to be a part of that? Would you like to take a small piece of your investment portfolio and invest in our business, which will not only provide you with a financial return, not a huge one. I think we ended up paying maybe a 5% annual return. I can't remember exactly what it was, but so it's not like a huge return, but 5% is, that's way better than what you would get at a bank, Sorry, my cat is making noise. And you can support our mission at the same time. And so, yeah, people said yes. So we told everyone. It wasn't just people that we already knew, because it was a public offering. So we could go to conferences and tell people we were doing it. And yeah.
Great.
And that's our model. Go ahead.
Sorry, everyone's very intrigued on how you did this. Was it a challenge to have that many small investors involved in your business? How did you manage that? And was it an issue?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that. I've now raised money, I think 5 different times for different businesses that I've been involved with. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of investors, and it's never actually been a hassle at all. People kind of have this idea that if you have a lot of investors, people are going to be bothering you all the time. But I've actually found the opposite to be the case, because each individual investor hasn't put in a huge amount. They really just don't talk to you at all. In fact, sometimes we have trouble tracking them down to send them their check. The only hassle about it is you do have to have a good accounting system, and to make sure you're tracking what you owe them, and preparing 1099s if you need to. And let's see, what was the other thing? Yeah, just keeping track of them, making sure you have updated contact info. We have lost touch with some of our investors. So yeah, so that's the only slight hassle, but it's way worth it, because I never hear from my investors. They never ask me, what's going on? Have you done this? Have you done that? I'm totally in control of my business. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
No, I think that's it on the Q&A for now.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for asking about that, because I didn't go into the detail on that, and it was my first time raising money, and it just totally transformed my attitude. Even though I had been helping others raise money, until I did it myself, I didn't realize how empowering it is. And I started just thinking of it as a water faucet you can turn on and off when you need it. Once you do it once, it gets easier and easier. So we actually, that 200,000, first we raised 150,000, and then a year later we realized we needed more. So we were like, let's raise again, and it's quite easy. Well, I shouldn't say it's quite easy, but it gets easier and easier. So what is bootstrapping? In the title of my talk, I say escape the bootstrap trap. So there's nothing wrong with bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is when you use your own resources and not other people's resources to grow your business. So my current business, my current law firm, is totally bootstrapped. I've never raised money for this business. And that's just because I was able, based on what I already had in place, the contacts I had, the ability to have clients come on fairly quickly when I started this business, I didn't need to raise money. However, I find that it's more common that businesses really do need to raise money, and they don't. And so they get into a trap, and it's kind of like what I described in the first business I was in, where I needed to raise money, where I felt like I was on a treadmill, because we just didn't have the resources to do the things that would have made our business successful. And if we could have just brought in those resources, we could have finally gotten to the point where we weren't struggling every month, and I wasn't having to wear every hat. So I find that many, many businesses do get into that trap, where they're just on this treadmill, never able to take their business to the next level. And I think a lack of resources and funding is one of the top reasons for business failure. Like every month you're like, oh, if I could just get a few more customers, then maybe I'd break even. And then maybe I could hire an assistant, and how can you get more customers when you're working 80 hours a week and you're the chief, cleaner and bottle washer and all of that, because you just don't have the energy to go out and do what it takes to get more customers. So it's this constant vicious circle. So that's what I call the bootstrap trap. And I show Kara Golden of Hint Water in this slide because I saw her speak once, and she talked about how when she started Hint Water, it was so important to her to build a company that she could be really, really proud of, and a product that she could really get behind. And that took a lot of money. And so she said it took her 11 years for her company to break even. And I'm like, wow, 11 years. So if she hadn't raised money from investors, she wouldn't have a business. You cannot operate at a loss for 11 years. Does that mean she was a failure during those 11 years? Like, oh, you're losing money every year, Carol, what's wrong with you? No, she was investing in making a great company. So there's nothing wrong with needing to raise money to have a successful business. And I find more businesses that I would like to, than I wish are trying to have a successful business when they should probably be raising money. And I think the reason they don't is because they have a lot of fears and concerns about what it looks like to raise money.
Jenny, I have an awesome comment from Carrie Sundra that is one of our clients. Carrie's awesome. And she's saying, you're describing my life when you're talking about that treadmill. And she's really appreciating this conversation. So it's good to know you're not alone and that there's a way out. There is
yes. Go ahead.
One question though, from Stan. He's asking, when you raise money, when you personally raise money for your business, were you able to use the money you were raising to pay off prior investors to buy time as you established the business and established your operations? Was that something
you found out my dirty secret of why we raised money the second time? Because we owed a big chunk of money to our first investors and we didn't have it. So we raised another $50K to pay our first investors.
Okay, great.
And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you are honest with everyone and disclose what's going on. And honestly, I learned a lot. We kind of didn't, the first time we raised money, what we promised to our investors was probably not super realistic. So now I know better, but it's absolutely fine to do that as long as you just disclose what's going on.
And we do have a technical question, and I don't know in how much detail you want to go into your business, but did you have to provide any personal guarantees to your investors?
Absolutely not. When I talk about raising money from investors and how I help people do that, part of my definition of that is you personally do not have anything on the line. It's just your business. I would never, ever advise a client to give a personal guarantee. The whole point of raising money from investors is to take that pressure off of you personally.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. Yeah. And the whole point of setting up that legal entity is to separate your personal assets from your business assets. And so, completely makes sense.
Yes. So, and that's why even though when I raised money, I raised it in the form of debt. Some people, the word debt completely scares them, but we have to realize that debt can mean a lot of different things. Debt can mean a loan where it's like 10% monthly interest. And if you miss your payment by 3 days, they're going to take your car and your house or something. That's one type of debt. But the type of debt I raised, it was just an annual payment to my investors, no penalty if we paid late, subordinated. So if we needed to raise other money, like from a bank, we could have, there's no personal guarantees, no collateral, this is super friendly debt. So not all debt is created equal. So, okay. So so bootstrapping can be a major problem. Again, I'm not against bootstrapping because, like I said, my current business is bootstrapped. It's working out fine, but I think too many businesses get into that trap and they don't know what to do. the solution to bootstrapping, I think, is probably, I can't think of many other solutions other than you've got to raise money from investors, because you need money now to invest in the things that's going to make your business healthy and sustainable, just like Kara Golden did. She needed 11 years to make her business healthy and sustainable, and she did it. So how do you do it? So, and here are the things that I hear from people when I ask them, like, why aren't you raising money for your business? You're in that bootstrap trap. There's a lot of fears that come up. I don't want to lose control of my business. I hear that's expensive money. I've heard investors don't invest in women and people of color. Who would invest in my business? I'm not ready. What if I lose my investors' money? So these are a lot of the things I hear people say when I ask them, like, why don't you just go out and raise some money? So these are all things that I think are misconceptions about what it means to raise money. You don't have to give up control. You can set the terms of the investment, so it doesn't have to be expensive money. There are ways of raising money where women and people of color are actually more successful than the average. I believe there are investors for every business. And I'm not ready. That could be true, but we can talk about most people think they're not ready long after they probably are ready. And then what if I lose my investors' money? I hear that a lot from people. And I have to say, I hope this doesn't offend anyone. I feel like women say that a lot more than men, which I think just goes to show that on average, that's why it's a good idea to invest in a woman-owned business because women are very concerned. And again, there's tons of men that feel this way too, but women generally are very concerned about not wanting to lose their investors' money. Well, guess what? That's exactly why people are going to want to invest in you, because you don't want to lose their money. But if doesn't go well and you do lose their money, despite all of your best efforts, that's actually okay, because you're making it, when someone invests in your business, you're making it very clear to them from the get-go that they could lose all their money. It's actually legally required that they sign a document saying, I understand I could lose all my money. So if that happens, it's obviously not pleasant, but it's okay. You'll survive, they'll survive. So now I'm going to talk about the 3 steps that I take my clients through to raise money on their own terms. So step 1 is creating your plan. And this is the most important part. The more you create, the more you can really think through your fundraising plan. Steps 2 and 3, I'm barely going to talk about steps 2 and 3 today because those parts are super easy if you do the first part well. I shouldn't say super easy. Again, like I don't want to over exaggerate how easy it is, but if you do the first part well, 2 and 3 become relatively straightforward. So you have to really think through, how am I going to go about raising money? A lot of people who want to raise money, they just start Googling around for investors, trying to figure out like, where do I find an investor? That's not a good way to raise money. You want to really plan out how are you going to bring on investors? Are there any questions at this point? Okay. So, the plan. So I wrote a book called Raise Capital on Your Own Terms, and that book has a 6-step process that you can go through to plan your fundraising process, your strategy. But even before you go through those 6 steps, I've realized that I need to talk about this thing that I'm about to talk about, and that is you have to choose a path. There's kind of 2 distinct paths for businesses to raise money from investors. And that is I call it the 2 worlds of quote unquote startup financing. So there's these 2 worlds. One of them looks a lot like the Death Star, and the other one is the beautiful planet Pandora from, what's that movie? Avatar.
I love the images. I mean, there's, pictures say 1,000 words, right?
So you have to pick. You have to live on one or the other. I have my biases about which one is better. So I'm going to explain what are these 2 planets. So the Death Star planet is what I call the venture capital path. Now, the venture capital path is a very, very well-worn path. It hasn't existed forever. It started becoming really popular in the 50s. So it hasn't been around forever. It's only a few decades old, but it's something that has become huge, huge over the last few decades. There are people who are, their whole life is devoted to investing using this particular model. And let's see if, yeah. So what is the model? So actually, I'll just go back to this for a second. So this model, you might be on the VC path and not even realize it, because you might say, oh, I'm not going to raise money from VCs. I'm just going to go to these angel groups and raise money there. Well, guess what? If you go to an angel group, you're on the VC path, because angels expect you to later raise money from VCs. So, so the VC model, and again, there are some businesses that have used this model and it's been successful for them. So I'm not saying it's always a bad thing, but it can be, it's not a good fit for most businesses. And what it is that you raise money, and the minute you bring on these investors, you're expected to grow really, really fast. Like they want you to maybe 3x your business every year. And they're actually not so concerned with you becoming profitable. What their biggest goal for you is to become an acquisition target and be acquired by a larger company. That to them is success. If you become profitable and make like a 20% profit a year or 50%, whatever, that's not success to them. The only way they get paid and the only way they can make their investors happy is if you sell your company, ideally within 5 to 7 years of when you first start raising money. Obviously, that's not a good fit for 99.9% of businesses, because most businesses cannot achieve that. However, again, if that's what you want, if you want to work as hard as you can for the next 5 to 7 years to grow your business for the purpose of selling it to a larger business at a higher price, the Death Star is perfect for you. So, however, there is one other aspect of it, which is you do give up control of your company as well. So that's another thing. So basically this VC model, it's a one size fits all approach. There's one definition of success, and that is you must exit. Fast growth is required. And because you're pushed to grow so fast, many businesses fail because of that money. Because if they had just been left to grow at a slow and steady pace, they might have made it. But because they're pushed to grow so fast, it actually pushes most businesses that accept this money right out of business. So exit is required, as I said. Your investors become your boss. At least 50% of founders get fired from their own business when they go down this path. If you're a mission-driven business, that's great, but the investors want you to be primarily focused on financial return. And sometimes if those things conflict, too bad, you've got to focus on financial return. Most of the people who get funded this way are, white male, went to Stanford or MIT, lives in the Bay Area or maybe Boston or New York. Again, not a fit for 99.9% of businesses. And what about the bigger picture of what this model is doing to our economy? If anyone is concerned on this call about the concentration of wealth in our country, guess what? The venture capital model is all about concentrating wealth in fewer and fewer hands. So if you care about who gets rich off of your business, if you want people other than rich white men to just get richer from your business, then maybe this isn't the best way to raise money. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I think it's awesome to get another perspective. We get so caught up in Crunchbase and the success stories that are highlighted for us of these tech companies that are on the unicorn pathway. But we need to talk about it's not all black and white. There's shades of gray, and there's room for it. Yeah.
Right. And I just think it's important to know if someone does choose that path, sometimes they don't even know they're choosing that path. But that's why I say the step step 0 for raising money is figure out if you want to be on that path or not. And if you don't, that's okay. There's other ways of raising money. That's what I've been helping my clients do for the past 15 years, is raising money outside of that. So this just shows your typical term sheet that describes this type of an investment. And it's just, again, very standardized, very cookie cutter. So what about Planet Pandora? I'm always trying to come up with a good name. Like, should we call it Planet Pandora? No, no one will know what we're talking about. One name that we call it, like, what is the opposite of VC? And something we came up with was We See. We Capital. So We Capital is raising money from investors who are not part of the VC ecosystem. It's like there's the VC ecosystem and then there's the non-VC ecosystem, and it does exist. In fact, less than, what is it? I think it's 0.3% of all investors in our country are on the venture capital, are in the venture capital model ecosystem. So 99.7% of all investors in our country are not VCs or angels leading up to VCs. You know, they're not on that VC path. So the good news is there's tons of people out there who will invest on the We See model. And so it could be your customers, it could be your suppliers, it could be activists that care about your mission as a business, it could be people from your community. It's just all those people out there who may or may not be super wealthy. Some are super wealthy, some not so much, but they all are investors currently. They currently have investment dollars in the stock market or some other investment, and they could take a portion of their portfolio and invest it in your business. So like I said, it's 0.3% of investors that are that VC style investor that, you know, generally are going to want you to be on that high growth path. 99.7% of investors are not. So I always have this image of all these entrepreneurs crowding around this tiny little pond, trying to fish in this little tiny pond, and right behind them, there's this ocean of money that they're totally ignoring.
Another great visual. That's great. You know, Jenny, we could just call it Planet Earth. You know, I mean, Planet Earth is beautiful. We want to keep it beautiful.
I wish Planet Earth was, you know, Planet Earth has both, you know, it has, I wish Planet Earth was only that, you know, but it does have some Death Star in it too. So this is something I found a while ago, this map. It shows every culture, every like indigenous culture on our planet. I don't know about every, but many, many indigenous cultures for thousands and thousands of years have had tools that they've used to gather resources together to support projects that they cared about. So many people who have, you know, who see this, like they recognize it from their, you know, like a tanda, that's a really popular one that a lot of people have heard about. It's just these kind of circles of people that come together to collectively support projects in their community. And this has been happening for thousands and thousands of years. And so to me, when someone asks me, oh, Jenny, you're not helping people with traditional business finance, you're helping them with alternative business finance. And I'm like, no, actually what I'm helping people with is traditional business finance. This is how people have funded ventures for thousands and thousands of years with We Capital, not VC. VC only just came about in the 50s. It's not some, you know, someone came up with the idea for a particular type of business. It's not like the be all end all way of funding a business. And by the way, most studies show, I mean, the studies done by the Kauffman Foundation have shown that the average return to a VC investment is 0 to negative. So it actually doesn't have a good track record of success. Yes, there's a few examples of huge success, but on average, venture capital investment doesn't even make money. So we need to take it off its pedestal and realize it's one way of funding a business. It may be appropriate in certain circumstances, but there's nothing that makes it more valid or more, you know, traditional or whatever than any other way of raising money. So on the We Capital Planet or Pandora, there's an infinite number of options. There's many, many ways to raise money. There's no standard one size fits all. There's no exit or fast growth required. If you want to grow at a more slow and steady pace and you want to keep your business in your family for generations, you can still raise money. You stay in charge of your business. You don't give up control unless you want to. Your investors value your mission as much as your financial return. What we're seeing is that with this way of raising money, often it's actually women and people of color that are doing better than the average. And it's the way that 99.9% of businesses that are wanting funding should be probably seeking funding, given that the other strategy is not appropriate for most businesses. So my biggest advice is don't try to straddle both worlds. I finally had to learn this because I've had many clients who didn't want to pick. They were like, well, I'm going to do it your way, Jenny, but I'm still going to keep going to those angel pitch competitions. And I'm still going to try to get appointments with these, this fund or that fund. And I just feel like that's a big waste of your time because they are such different paths that if you try to do both, it's really going to be almost impossible. You have to, it's almost like trying to, it's like living a bilingual life, which is, some people are able to do that, but it's like living on two planets at the same time. It's like you're speaking a totally different language. You're talking to totally different people. You're making totally different promises. So I just highly recommend you step 0. We've only talked about step 0 and I have steps 1 through 6 to still talk about, but this step is so key. If you just pick, then everything else is going to be a lot easier. So I'll just give you some examples of some of my clients. Kubain Ice Cream in Oakland or San Leandro. They offered a revenue-based debt instrument. So it's debt, and this is actually what I offered the first time I raised money too. There's an annual payment to the investors, but the payment is calculated based on the profits of the company. So it's very, very friendly debt. They used an investment crowdfunding website to raise $105,000. Now they're actually raising $3 million and they're offering equity now.
So hang on, Jenny. So these guys are straddling both worlds here on this one. Because they're okay. So they're raising $3 million. They're doing an equity deal. So what are the terms of that deal?
Yeah. So Judy, you're bringing something up that's very important. I've found that when I say the word equity, people assume, like you just did, that equity has to be VC.
Okay.
But that's not true. And I'll give you some examples in a minute of you can offer equity without it being on the VC model. So,
right.
So here's a really good example. This is a great example. So Community Foods Market in Oakland, they raised $1.7 million in equity when they were first starting out. So they did not offer debt, they offered equity. But the equity was not structured on the VC model. So what they did is they said, okay, and they also did a public offering. It was before the crowdfunding law went into effect, but they did the state stuff that they needed to do to offer an investment opportunity. The minimum investment was $1,000. What they said is to people is like, okay, we're selling this stock. It's preferred stock. And what that means is that every year we're going to try our best to pay you a 3% dividend. So every year, if we're profitable, we're going to take a piece of our profits and pay that out to our investors. They were just starting out. They didn't even have a location yet when they raised money. So they told their investors, we know it's going to take us at least 7 years before you're going to see a dime. But once we start up, we find a location, we build it, we become profitable, we will start paying dividends. And I'm an investor in that, and I have yet to see a dime, but they do exist now. And I'm looking forward to getting my first check. And what about, and no one has any voting rights, it's non-voting stock. So, and what about if I wanted to exit? So I invested $1,000. What if I really wanted my $1,000 back? they have no plans to sell the company. So I'm not going to probably get my money back when they sell the company. That's just not in the cards for them. However, I do have the right to request my money back. And if they're able to honor it, they'll pay me back either immediately or over time. So we call that a structured exit. So it's a way for people to exit if they need to or want to. But it's always ultimately up to the business to decide, are we able to honor that request or not? RECOMPOSE is another one that raised money. I think she's now raised like $6 million. Again, non-voting preferred stock with dividends, no plan for an exit. She did not do a public offering like the previous two did, like I mentioned. She did a private offering, so she just spoke to investors one-on-one. I think, people invested anywhere from maybe 25,000 to 100,000, and it took her a really long time to raise $6 million. She, when she first started out, she needed 700,000 when she first started out, because her business, which it's a way of dealing with people after they die in a environmentally friendly way. And when she first started out, her business was not legal in any state. So she needed to raise 700,000 to hire a lobbyist and for other expenses to get her business to be legal. So once she was able to do that, then she was able to raise she's now raised about 6 million.
So Jenny, we have some questions. I don't know, maybe you'll go into the details of these public offerings. What are the terms, or what are the legal limits around these offerings?
Yeah, I am going to get to that in a second. And we're supposed to end at 9:30, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to try to go much faster. Okay. So the next step is choose what you want to offer to investors. And I should say right now we are in the middle of this 5-day challenge that I'm doing, which is all about what you want to offer to investors, designing that offer. So we'll share that. If someone could put that maybe in the chat. It's a free 5-day challenge. We are on day 3 today, but you could easily catch up if you're interested, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of planning what it is you want to offer to investors. So okay, so that's what you want to offer. Is it equity? Is it debt? How is it structured? All of that. And then there's the compliance strategy. So that gets into that whole question of like public offering, private offering. How do how does that all work? This is where there's a lot of regulation. This is where securities laws come in. So you do have to be careful and make sure you're doing it correctly, but you want to choose a strategy. There's many, many ways to do it correctly, and you want to choose one that fits your goals and plans. So there is this thing called an accredited investor, who's someone with at least $1 million in net worth or 200,000 in annual income. A lot of people think they have to limit their investment offerings to accredited investors, but it's simply not true. There's many, many ways to include everybody. So you can choose, there's many ways to choose, many options, but basically you want to choose, do I want to be able to publicly advertise the fact that I'm raising money? Ben and Jerry's actually did that back in 1984 when they were first starting out. They did a public offering to all residents of Vermont. So do you want to be able to publicly advertise the fact that you're raising money, or are you okay with keeping it private and just having one-on-one conversations? That's what my client RECOMPOSE did. They chose at first to do a private offering, and that's how they raised their first 700,000. Do you want to limit it to accredited investors, or do you want to include everybody? If everybody, are you okay with having just a few unaccredited, or do you want to be able to have like lots and lots of unaccredited? How much do you want to raise? The more you're raising, the fewer options you have from a regulatory perspective. But as long as you're raising less than $1 million or so, you have a lot of different options. Which states, if you want to offer an investment opportunity in all states, that's your options are going to be different versus if you just want to offer it in like 1 or 2 states or, 5 or 10. So these are the things you need to think about. And once you figure those things out, we can help you find a strategy that fits for you. And I'll just mention the Jobs Act. This is the back of my head watching President Obama sign the Jobs Act in 2012. No grays at that point, very different now. I had actually, believe it or not, in 2009, I had founded a nonprofit, and we had written a petition to try to get this into law. And believe it or not, there I am at the signing ceremony. So basically, this law created many, many more compliance options, and it created this thing called investment crowdfunding, which now allows you to raise money from people all over the country without having, and publicly advertise, and anyone can invest. There's no minimum wealth or income requirement. And who's getting funded using that model? Women and people of color are actually doing fairly well and better than average when they raise money from the public. I actually am a co-founder of a crowdfunding platform called Crowdfund Main Street. Angels of Main Street is another organization I started, which is an organization, since I believe so strongly that everyone should be able to invest. You shouldn't have to be wealthy to invest. I started this thing called Angels of Main Street, which is a place where you can be an angel investor regardless of whether you are wealthy or not or have experience investing. We provide training materials and monthly meetings where we talk about different investment opportunities. And all we ask is people invest at least $500 a year in a business of their choice, at least one. We don't recommend any investments. It's just we help you do that. Okay, so I could say a lot more about the planning process. Like I said, I have a book that has like a 6-step process, but I went through the main components of that planning process. And then once you have your plan, then we have to do some legal documents, legal filings. And then finally, step 3 is raise money. So, so that's the end of my presentation. So any questions?
So I'm going to, I think, that's a question I've had with founders who are seeking the right type of investor, right? Especially founders who've set themselves up as a B corporation. Your investor pool does narrow down a little bit to people who need to understand what your social mission is. So a couple comments here in the chat or in the Q&A.
Can I just say something really quick?
Yes, of course.
I don't think it narrows down. It's just a different pool.
It's a different pool. Good point. It is a different pool. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're right, Jenny. No. I mean, it's hard because we're on Zoom, but we want this to be conversational, so it's great. And so Mark Cortez mentioned, the biggest challenge he has is finding those investors who understand what he's trying to do around water. In his case, it's water conservation. But any high-level tips on connecting with that right pool of investors?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big conversation. I think the first step with that is just really changing your mindset about who investors are. If you're fishing in that tiny pool of the 0.3% of the population that call themselves investors, I call them professional investors because they're people who, like on LinkedIn, it says they're an investor. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find people because there are so few of them, and many of them may not be a good fit because they may not care that much about your mission. They just want to make money. But if you just realize that there's all these other people out there who could be investors for you, all of a sudden it just broadens your pool so much. Like even just as simple as like, oh, I could go to the committee of the Sierra Club that cares about water conservation. I bet like a ton of people in that meeting could be potential investors for you, you know?
So Jenny, when you take on clients, so I already have a few people who look like they want to hire you.
Great.
So we'll refer them your way. I'm guessing you are taking on new clients at this time.
We do. I mean, we have, we are somewhat limited in how many people we could take on, but, there's lots of ways to get our help. One is to join that challenge, which is free. Join that. I would really recommend joining that today. And we have other resources. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more, just like go to our website or join the challenge, and then we can take, you'll see from there kind of what next steps might be.
So Olivia is going to add in the chat your email information. So anyone who wants to email you directly to get more information.
Actually, you know what? Instead of emailing me, because we are, it's a little hard for us to respond to every email. What we do have is an interest form on the website.
For people. You have put the website up in the chat a few times, so we'll put it up again.
Yeah, I'm going to put the specific link to the interest form. If you really want to talk about potentially working with us and having us become your lawyer and your capital raising coach, the best first step is just complete this interest form so we can get to know you a little bit better, and then we'll reach out and talk about next steps.
Thank you. And so I think for some of the questions that I'm seeing a theme there too. And you talked about this by just giving the example of the Sierra Club. So is that something you do with all your clients? Do you coach them through, well, what's the pipeline? What does it look like? So you actually do that work with your client?
Yeah, we help our clients figure out who to reach out to as potential investors. We also have our own pool of investors. We have Angels of Main Street. We have relationships with investors that are on board with our kind of philosophy. So we do kind of try to expose our clients to the people that we know. We never want to promise anything with that. We're not there to kind of promise you, oh, we're going to find you investors, but we are part of the ecosystem, the growing ecosystem of people who want to create a financing possibilities for financing outside of venture capital. So we just try really hard to help people think through who should I be reaching out to. We have calls with our clients where we bring guest speakers on who are investors who think outside the box. So we just do everything we can to try to expose people to that other way of thinking, so that it takes some time, but you start to generate lists and lists and lists of people who could be potential investors for you. And then, of course, once you start reaching out to investors, then they're going to give you other ideas. Oh, have you talked to so-and-so? Oh, have you tried this organization?
Great. Any more questions here in the Q&A? So we have a question from Miguel. How much interest should they take on borrowing debt from an investor? A 5 to 10% investor. I think that's what the person meant. So, interest is somewhat negotiable. There's a range. There's an existing market rate. What are your thoughts, Jenny?
Well, definitely join our challenge that's happening right now, because this challenge that we're doing, it's all about step 3 in my book, which is deciding what to offer. And that has to do with figuring out, do I want to do equity or do I want to do debt? If I do debt, how do I want to structure it? How do I want my investors to get paid? If I do equity, how do I want to structure it? How do I want my investors to get paid? Do I want to do a convertible note? Do I want to do a SAFE? So getting into all those questions is exactly what we're doing in this challenge right now. Mm-hmm. So, and just to let you know, you do have to go on Facebook after to participate in the challenge. I know a lot of people hate Facebook, so please,
after watching I think we've all watched The Social Dilemma, right?
Well, I've been telling people just join Facebook for this week, and then you can leave Facebook and don't look at anything other than our group.
Yes. So one interesting question. So you suggested not Googling investors. Is there a good place to find interested investors that will connect to what you're doing, to your social mission, et cetera?
Yeah, again, I feel like it's often a mindset shift, because you're probably walking around these people every day You're just not thinking of them as investors. It's really anyone who is in alignment with the mission of your business. Could be your customers, could be your suppliers, could be mission aligned folks. So that's where, just if they have the word investor on their LinkedIn profile, chances are they may not be a good fit, because they may be looking, if you're not into the VC model, most people who call themselves investors are investing on the VC model. I hate to say. It's changing. We're meeting more and more disgruntled people that are sick of that model, or maybe they still like that model, but they want to diversify into other things. So we're growing a community of people. That's why we have Angels of Main Street, people who are interested in exploring other ways of investing. And some of the members of Angels of Main Street are people who have invested for decades on the VC model, and they're exploring other ways.
And so we'll end with this last question from Johnny White. He says, debt seems so risky for investors. Why do investors do it? What's driving them to take that risk? I think in a way it's actually possibly less risky, but
equity, yeah. Debt, I think debt and equity, in a way, the risk level, debt is generally less risky than equity because debt comes first if you go out of business.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you're going to business, the odds are you probably won't see a dime. But
exactly. That's what I was going to say. The risk levels for both are incredibly high. It's so possible you'll never see your money again.
It doesn't take the risk away from, you're investing in a startup. Startups are very high risk. It's a startup. They still have to prove so much, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so we love to talk to, we're always trying to educate investors about different ways of thinking about investing. And you just have to really think. So for example, I personally have invested in a bunch of my clients, and I know it's a high risk investment, but I know them. I know they're very high integrity people. I know they're super passionate about their mission. Some of that, remember I was saying earlier, women hate to lose their investors' money. So is it really that high risk to invest in them? Because they know me, they don't want to lose my money, and they really care about their business. Their business is like their baby. So is it that high risk? Yes, I could lose all my money, but I'm betting on that person's passion, their commitment, their integrity, versus the stock market, which is based on robots. I don't know which one is really more risky. I don't know, so let's just be realistic about what is really risky and what is not risky.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it's 9:30. Unfortunately, we have to wrap. But Jenny, thank you so much. We've put links in the chat for everyone to all the challenge that you mentioned, to your book, your website, the information request form. So thank you so much. It's just been wonderful to talk about other ways of doing this. And, it's to each his own. For certain companies, certain pathways make more sense than others. And it's just a question of what you want, so many elements that you touched on, the mission behind what you're doing versus the, yes. We could keep talking for hours. This is an awesome topic. But thank you, and we'll go ahead and make sure that anyone who has any follow-ups has all the right information to connect with you.
Yes, and at noon today is when we're going live for day 3 of our challenge, and from noon to 1, I answer questions in the comments under the training. So if you have more questions, you could come on there and ask.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Take care. Goodbye. And just to wrap up, so we do have some training sessions coming up ourselves. We have a QuickBooks tax reporting session on October 23rd. So sign up. It's very limited seating. It is virtual, but sign up. If you can't click on the link right here, just send me, Liz, or Olivia an email, and we'll give you the direct link to sign up. And our next coffee and conversation, we're really excited to hear from Trent. Trent Ellingson, who was the winner of AngelCon on what's going on with Atlas Alpha, where he's at. So really looking forward to get an update from him. It's been about 6 months since he won the 100K, 125K at AngelCon 2020. Hope to see you next month. And in the meantime, any questions, don't hesitate to email us. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.